Hi, and welcome to episode 11 of Known Through Connection. We are continuing our conversation with Bridget Knaub from episode 10, talking about where humanity and AI meet and the connection that we have both with AI and more so with who we are as people and with each other and as humans as we progress into this new era of change. Welcome back. If you did not hear episode 10, please go back. It's going to make more sense for you to hear the background and connection and where we're coming from. Bridget and I, just to set the stage again a little bit, Bridget and I are coming from places of change professionally this year. We have both been in technology leadership and now are in places where our careers look very different. It's giving us fresh eyes within this season of and this time of change where AI is really starting to disrupt a lot of things. Bridget, thank you for joining for this second conversation. So glad to have you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Bridget, when we left in episode 10, and I'm so glad you brought up this analogy to get us going towards this direction of the conversation. You brought up some of the conversation we had around a gym,
Mhm.
right? And just thinking about things that we take for granted now. And as I've been thinking about for myself, what does it look like? What are we doing now that we're taking for granted that in the future we'll actually value, right? And so you brought up are talking about that analogy, and I'll try to re-summarize it a little
Yeah.
bit here, just kind of get us going. But um, if you think about years ago, work, going to work, if you will, was going out, using your body, moving heavy things. I think you used a farming example, which is fairly recent. If you go back further, you had the pyramids,
Yeah.
for example, and work was, or slavery, depending on how you look at it. Work was going out for doing something for somebody else was going out and moving heavy things for somebody else, right? You probably, I'm gonna be optimistic. You probably were getting paid or food for going out, using your body, lifting heavy things. You are receiving payment. You are receiving something for that. Now we're in now we're in a society where, at least in Western world, where things have evolved. We've moved beyond the Industrial Revolution. We're knowledge workers. We're well into a different way of living. And we don't necessarily, yes, I know there's exceptions, and yes, I know I'm painting a broad stroke. We don't necessarily get paid to move heavy things. In fact, now we pay. I'm like, I will give you money to let me come to your building and move that heavy thing from point A to point B over and over again. I'm getting paid to move heavy things, I value that so much, I'm going to pay you to do it. And so I just think about like what we take for granted nowadays, what we value, where at one time we would have come home after work and said, I don't want to move anything. Now, granted, some of us are still in that mindset, but I don't want to move anything. Now, some of us actually pay money that we have earned at our job to go move heavy things. I think if you would have gone back 1,000 years and told people there will be millions of people who will pay money to lift heavy stones,
Right. Right.
they'd be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Why? And why? And why would you?
And so I think about like with you brought it up, right? Things are going to change. We've already had search engines like Google and others that have really democratized. I'm going to say, I'm not going to say it perfectly, but democratized knowledge, right? I can search for something and generally get information. But now it's with AI, it's almost really democratizing expertise, not just knowledge. Like it has the context, it has the awareness. As long as you give it to it, it knows like what you're intending to do, the context in which you're intending to use the knowledge. It can bring, it democratizes and completely flattens expertise. I know for myself, I'm seeing that in the software development industry. It's ironic that the industry that's created AI is making it very hard to stay employed. That
Mhm.
industry is finding it
I know.
harder and harder to stay employed because AI is able to do software development now. Um, I guess what's some of your reaction to that?
Oh, I mean, I shake my head. Yes. I think you're so right. It has democratized knowledge. I mean, you've heard the jokes like, Med students now, right? Doctors now are getting educated, by AI. Lawyers are getting educated by AI, right? And these thoughts of kind of like, well, that doesn't seem right, but to the point of the expertise is out there. I think the question becomes, how do you balance it and discipline yourself enough to where you don't lose sight of, just like my example with the other realtor, female, how do you balance it enough with the other things? And all things in balance, right? I think every to me that's the thought to kind of round it out with is yes, certainly it's making the knowledge, I think, level. But then how do you differentiate? If everything then becomes level, what becomes the differentiating factor? And how do you ingest and incorporate, right? Some of, like, to your point, what makes us humans, and how do you allow that to become a separating element, or an enhancing element?
Yeah, I'll share with you. I want to take us a certain direction. I'll share with you something I thought was kind of funny this morning. Um, I am cognizant and aware that I'm intentionally trying to set up my camera in a way that I think I'm near 4K, right? Trying to record in 4K, trying to provide a good experience. And I woke up, I'm like, oh, I kind of have a little bit of a breakout on my face.
Okay.
And I think that, a year or two ago, I would have been like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I need to get my wife to put some makeup on me. And now I'm like, it's interesting where to bring some imperfection, does that prove my authenticity that I'm actually a human and not
Yeah.
AI, right?
Yeah.
And not that I'm like wanting to like highlight imperfection, but it's interesting that like at least I'm starting to see it more and more in the channels I'm on, different platforms where you're seeing AI being used more instead of people,
Mhm.
right? And you're seeing videos where you're like, that's not a real person. It's too
Mhm.
perfect.
Mhm.
That's an AI person, and the voice doesn't quite line up with you can
No?
just you're like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
off, right? There's dissonance. And you can tell some of the writing is like, tells to look for, right? And I say that as somebody uses AI to help me write. I'm not opposed to AI creating content, but you can you're like, I just know this isn't a person, right? And it
Mhm.
feels different.
Mhm.
I'm curious, have you used Sora at all, the video content?
I haven't
Uh,
used that one, but I've used a couple others. I've dabbled
have
in.
you?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you gone through, I think they call it cameos, where you kind of record yourself, and then after you've done that, now you can repurpose yourself to recreate scenes that it's not actually you, but the AI will create you doing things. Have you tried that before?
I haven't done that. I've used more of just the voice recording of different voices and different fluctuations and things like that, but no, I haven't done a scene.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You and I have a mutual friend, Mo Alada, and
Mhm.
Mo played around with it quite a bit. And it's so fascinating because AI can create video of you um, doing things, fantastical things, and it looks real, and yet it's not you. And so if you've been on the Sora platform, that's all the videos are. It's a social media platform. It is AI generated videos using real people as models, and you visually can't tell. And I tell you, it is a weird experience, and I've intentionally done it, to spend a session just going through Sora videos and your brain being like, all of this looks real, it looks real, but none of it is. It's a weird thing.
So, I did see some of those, I think, on Reels. They were Halloween, um, style videos, right? And so it was like some possum or, raccoon eating out of the Halloween candy in the porch. And the Ring camera is apparently where the angle, there's the perspective. So the video is being recorded from some kind of, Ring type camera. And
Yeah.
the animal is eating the candy, and then like a bear comes in or something, you know what I mean? And it looks so real, but you're like, but wait, that would never happen. How would a bear come in? And but I watched it probably 30 times because, to your exact point, I'm like, but man, it looks so real. To me,
Yeah.
that's scary because how many people are able to discern if I wasn't necessarily.
Yep.
And back to your point of, it reminds me of the Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility. It's
Yes.
so true here. It's like, God, think about if this gets into the wrong hands or for evil. Now, there's obviously positive things you could
And
do,
it will. I'm
right?
just
Of
going to say
course,
it
it already
will.
has. I mean, it already
Yeah, it
has,
already has.
right?
Yes.
But
Yep.
I think it's scary and discerning. And but let me jump real quick to something to your point on how are people, what's the new trend in terms of what are people doing to kind of like ensure that the videos they're making are displaying themselves as human.
Hmm.
I think that's also trending up because what I've been seeing too is people will do the typical in my room, doing a new outfit, videoing on the mirror, but there's intentionally just kind of a mess left, right? It's like it's not perfect. The bed's
Yeah.
not perfectly made. All the shoes aren't put away, right? And to me, that showcases authenticity and human because an AI would never do that. It would never, unless you told it to,
Mm-hmm.
but it would never leave the bed like that or the shoes on the ground, right? It would, if you said do a bedroom scene, it would perfectly set it up. Versus I think when people are recording, they're intentionally trying to showcase, "Hey, this is me, right? This is how I
Mm-hmm.
live. Sure, my shoes might be under the bed and you can see them, but I'm not fake."
Bridget, I'm going to ask you a deep question, and
Yeah.
this is why you're on this episode, right? And we're talking about humanity and AI meet. If AI can create you,
Mhm.
and it can create a context that feels authentic and has a little bit of mess to it, why does it matter? Why does it matter that it's not really you? Why is that? It's important, actually.
Mhm.
There is something there. Why is that important that it actually be you? Why does that matter to us? Is this a person or not? Why does that matter?
And I think to some people it may not matter as well as much as it does to others. I mean, totally frank. For me, it does matter. Um, because I want to have a connection. I really do. I think that's what I really value at the end of the day is like you hear me and understand me and who I am. And I vice versa, hear you and what's going on in your mind and what makes you you. Um, from my experience, that a machine couldn't do that,
Mm,
from my perspective. Yes, it could facade look exactly like, you or me. Um, but that's what separates us from the machines, right? Is
mm,
that um that human nature, that grace that we all have, that ability that we all have to relate, to empathize, those types of things.
mhm. It's interesting. I'm going to say his name wrong. I just know him as Gary V, right? Gary V. I think it's, I'm not even going to try. Gary V. He's on social media platforms. He's big in the entrepreneurial circles. He's got like 11 million followers on Instagram. I don't even know TikTok, but you probably recognize him if you saw him. It was interesting. A couple months ago, he shared out. He was on a podcast and he was talking about how he thinks society is going to change and how he thinks, and I'm actually seeing some of this. He thinks that the human experience is going to become more valuable, right? Things that we've taken for granted that are going to be now premium experiences. For example, and I'm hearing of this even in Omaha now. I talked about it with my parents, and they're like, "Yeah, we've experienced that or heard about it." Where you go to make a restaurant and they have a no phone rule. Like the restaurant
Mm, mm,
says, if you want to eat here, you're going to lock up your phone and you're going to have a non-electronic experience. And it's an experience. It's no longer like the high school rule of like you have to put your phone in your locker. I'm intentionally going to this restaurant to have a phone-free dinner, right? That is
mm.
an experience I'm looking for and I'm paying for, and it was an example of elevating the human experience. And he even went further, and I actually, this resonated with me. I think he said, even today I can see that there can be a business, somebody can have a business where, and you will be willing to pay for somebody just to go on a walk with you. Hey, I want to go on a walk. I want to have human interaction. I want somebody to listen to me. I want somebody to engage with me. I'm willing to pay for that. And somebody could actually start a business just being a companion on walks. He said, I can see that. And the podcast host said, I think I can kind of see that too. And he said, the fact that you can even say that you kind of see that 100 years ago, we would have said, you're crazy.
Right. I know. It's so true. And when you share that, what I think about, Jess, is the unlearning that has to happen.
Hmm.
Right? There's such an element of unlearning because we've either learned bad habits or we've forgotten what it means to have that connection, or you've replaced that connection with something else like your device, or being alone, or maybe you're in a bus where you just put in headphones right away and like don't want to talk to anybody, right? The commuter
Yeah.
type stuff. Um or you're intentionally just trying to kind of block people out because you're filling that space with other things. But I could eventually, to your point, that pendulum kind of comes back, right? It's
Hmm.
kind of shifted, and it's still shifting in my opinion.
Yep.
It's still kind of shifting for the majority, but it eventually has to come back. But one of the only ways it starts to come back from my perspective is you have to kind of unlearn. And yes, you have to have these opportunities for people that are willing to just value the connection. But how do you get to a place where you're recognizing that that's what you're missing? I think that's going to be interesting too.
Hmm.
And people will start to, it'll be like anything else where like your friend will say, hey, check out this new cool thing, or hey, would you love to go talk? And then it just snowballs into itself. I could see that totally happening. Just like us with connecting and meeting. I mean, you think about, we go to, Karma Coffee, there,
Yeah.
that place is filled
Yeah.
every time we're there. And it's people just sitting and talking. And that's not by accident, right? I think people intentionally go there. They feel safe. They enjoy the environment. They enjoy the atmosphere. So it's like, how do you unlearn and then start to recognize that what you're enjoying and feeling is that human connection?
Yes. I think you raise an insightful question for somebody who's just in the motions, right? They're working with technology every day. They're on Zooms, they're on Teams,
Hmm.
whatever. They're commuting. Maybe they see a couple people in the office. They're going home, closing the garage door. How do you recognize that kind of like missing sunlight, right? Like in the
Hmm.
winter,
Yeah,
you miss sunlight and you're like, something feels
something's
off,
off.
right?
Something's off. Yeah.
What do you look for to know you're missing that human connection? What do you look for?
Gosh, it's a great question because I can I can share. I'm one of those, what are they called? Introverted extroverts. Like
Yeah,
I recharge by being home by myself.
same, same.
I love talking with people. When I'm in the mode of engaging, I am super social. I want to be out. But then I hit my limit and I'm like, whew, I gotta go recharge. I gotta go home. I wonder if it's the same, only flipped, I wonder if you just start to, maybe we come up with a term. I mean, maybe honestly, there's something that starts to develop in terms of you start to name it. I mean, what did we come up with the names introvert, extrovert? I mean,
Yeah,
maybe there's this recognition that, like the lack of sunlight, lack of vitamin D,
yeah.
you start to call it something. It's like a lack of humanity, lack of connection, lack of, I don't know, lack of just, touch. And I think, quick, I was wanting to say this. I think it's more than just connecting on a verbal or emotional level.
Hmm.
I think there's also the need to recognize the value of human touch, right? Like
Hmm.
hugging.
Hmm.
And I can share all of my children spent time in the NICU. They were all born early. Now we were blessed enough to be able to be there every day in the hospital, right?
Hmm.
But I don't know if you know, there are some babies that either the mother's ill or they can't make it or whatever the case may be. They're not able to be there, and there are people that volunteer to just hold and rock the babies.
Hmm.
The importance of the connection, right? The human touch that needs to be there. That
Hmm.
never leaves us, right? That stays with us as human beings. And there's studies that show how it impacts your brain and how a hug needs to be, 21 seconds in order to kind of change this part of your brain that values that.
Hmm.
So I think that's a side of connection too that we have to recognize. It's not just emotionally filling me up, but like being able to also just have a hug or like get a shoulder, or, you know, support each other from that perspective as well.
I so agree with you. I think it is so true. And I'm just kind of reflecting because up until a couple years ago, I was not a hugger, and then I kind of had a little bit of a just an internal change, and to where yesterday, I met somebody for the first time. Actually, you might know them. But that's a different Note Through Connection
Different
episode.
day, different talk.
um, I met somebody for the first time, and we spent an hour together at Karma Coffee. And by the time we left, he asked to give me a hug, and I did, and I was like, "Yeah, that feels natural, and that feels what we should do, given the conversation we had." And there's just something about it's hard to articulate, but even I mean, I appreciate Bridget, that we're doing this podcast through Riverside, and it provides, in my opinion, probably currently a better experience for our listeners.
Yeah.
But there is something about being able to look somebody in the eye and see reflected back to you a smile, a genuineness, or let's say hard things are going on, like compassion, right?
Hmm.
There's something humanly validating about that human personal connection. And I'm sure, like many people, I've had some sessions with AI processing some emotional things, and it's helpful. Yet, if I know it's a person saying it to me, like Bridget, if you're and you've done this, if you're encouraging me, for example, that is immensely more meaningful to me than if this made up AI persona is encouraging to me. And I've wondered, is it because there's the risk that you as a person, Bridget, there's a higher risk that you could choose not to encourage me. You could actually be like, Jess, I don't approve of you. I no longer think highly of you. I could withdraw. Is it the fact that I think it's more than this, but is there a component that because AI is wired to um I'm trying not to use kid language here, teenage language, because AI is wired to be positive and embracing to you, and that it's not really, unless you force it, it's not going to be negative to you. Is there something about the risk of a human choosing to either not or to show you connection that makes it more meaningful? I don't know, something I've been kind of pondering and thinking about.
That's a good question. Like the risk reward system, sort of, right? If you get and then the reward's greater. I don't know. That's interesting. I haven't thought about that.
Yeah, but I do think there is something innately inside of us where, yes, as somebody who loves technology, it is so fun and almost magical the things we're able to accomplish. And yet we still need that human connection. We still need the human part. And I'm going to go back to actually, I'm going to circle back to, I have a friend who does not like the word circle back. Um, Sorry for the corporate lingo in there. Um, I'm going to go back to episode 10, where you brought up the example of I'm a business leader who's concerned about their frontline folks who might not have business knowledge because of depending on AI too much.
Yeah.
I actually think, in my opinion, um, AI is not going anywhere. It's only just starting. It's going to be more. Um, Yet, I firmly believe, and this is where I'm headed, a differentiator
Hmm.
will be as a business owner, as I leverage AI, can I keep the essence of who I am, of who Jess is, inside my use of AI, right? Am I able to some degree, see myself, know what's important to me, know my personality, know what values I believe are important. And then as I leverage technology, am I able to bring that into, and you use the word, I can't remember the word you use, but essentially amplify. I'm going to use the word amplify, right? It's amplifying the core of who you are. And I think about, for example, you see this in non-AI context, right? I can think about businesses that I've interacted with even this last year where I'm like, hey, I really like, once I get past I'm going to term it this way. Once I get past the front desk, I really like the person who serves me, but that front desk experience is a little shaky. Like that person is not quite get good at customer service, right? And I'm like, man, I wonder if that person who owns the business knows that that front desk worker is causing a disconnect in the experience for me as a customer. I kind of view it the same way with AI. If I can leverage AI and be transparent where I'm using AI and have it bring forward my values, my way of interacting with the world, does that bring about a healthier use of technology? Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
I can go further with that, but
No, no, no. It absolutely does. And I think an example that correlates to what you're sharing that really resonates with me is the way, if you think about the way, you know, technology is implicate, in, I should say, getting involved in the medical world, right? So so we all know this has been around for years, robots that help the doctor do surgeries, and I think it's still the doctor for the most part controlling the robot, but what it's enhanced is quality of surgeries, right? Maybe maybe the incisions don't have to be so large. I'm not the expert, but you get my point.
yep,
Like the way that
yep,
they're able to enhance.
yep,
And if I think about that analogy too, and I think about, if you think about the way AI is going to help nurses, doctors, if it's going to give them more time, right, to then focus on the patient and the human interaction side of their job, because that's so critical. Nobody, you know, back to your point of having that hard conversation with someone or that good conversation with someone,
mhm,
that's an environment where it's so critical. Emotions are so high typically,
mhm,
right? Good or not good, that it's so important to have the right human connection. Yet, how beneficial can an AI or a new technology be to increase and enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of their roles?
mhm,
That's the example I think of. So, basically, echoing what you're saying, how can they enable themselves to be really good at the human side of their job, but
mhm,
also do their job super well, the other side of
mhm.
their job? You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I think you're spot on.
I think that's a great example because that moment where somebody's having a potentially difficult conversation with somebody, breaking news that or talking through a scenario that may be difficult.
Hmm.
You don't want AI. You want that human connection, and we could probably go way off a deep end of like why is that? But yet it's true,
Right,
right? It just
right.
is. It is what it is. You want that, and so if you can free up your people to take
Hmm.
on more of those aspects where it's more important to have that human connection rather than entering data in a screen,
Right,
who cares,
right.
right? Um,
Or triple
God,
checking my calculations, right? Or oh, I carried the one wrong, or I don't know how that I have no idea, but I think one of the books I've read is on how it's going to incredibly change and enhance the medical world, right?
mm,
And so I think it's just, to me, that's exciting. It's not scary. That's awesome. You
mhm,
think about the amazing things that are going to happen there, and then
mhm,
yet no one becomes. I mean, it's like, why did you get into technology, right? To solve problems and make a difference.
mhm,
Same if you were to go ask a nurse or a doctor, why did you become a doctor or a nurse? They're not going to say to figure out, how to calculate the right amount of fluid to push through the IV. They're going to say, because I want to change people's lives. I want to make an impact on people's lives. I think that's probably when you get down to the core of the why, you know, that's the true for even myself. I want to make an impact for people. We talk about the seven primal questions. That's my primal question.
yeah,
What's my purpose? How am I helping others? What am I doing to support other people? And if I can, to your point, if I can still accomplish that, but do it even better and be wider spread through the use of a technology like AI, that just satiates me internally so much more.
mhm. You bring up the primal question, and we're not going to go deep in that in this episode, but the primal question is a framework by Mike Foster that's a way to look at yourself and see how you're shaped, right? And a way to find kind of your human superpower, if you will. And
Hmm.
so, what I'll say is, it's interesting, right? To start to use some of these ways of looking at yourself, personality tests, strengths tests, tests that talk about your attachment order, things like that to start to understand. Because honestly, Bridget, and I'm trying to decide whether I use you as an example or me,
Mhm.
but um, I'm going to flip it on myself. Let's say, Bridget, you're like, hey, I want to work with Jess, and I'm thinking about working with Jess. I hope that you're like, I want to have a consistent Jess experience when I interact with him, even if he's using AI,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So if I interact with your website, if I interact with, let's say you have an app or something for scheduling or whatever, when I interact with you, well, I listened to a podcast and it was really good. And I can't remember right now, but it used the acronym HEART, and I'm not going to be able to recite it, but it was, if when you're using AI, bring your heart into it. And there's a
Hmm.
whole acronym for that. And one of the things that they said is, if you're using AI, be transparent when it's AI versus when it's a person, right? You don't want somebody guessing when I'm interacting with AI, when I'm versus when I'm interacting with a human. You don't want that. So be transparent when it's a virtual AI assistant or whatever versus when it's a human, so they know. And then have that experience reflect who you are, right? If you're interacting with, even, let's say I create a AI virtual assistant, you're going to want that AI to interact with you as an extension, as an expression of who I am. When you're going to want, I want an interaction of Jess over
Mhm.
here, because that's
Mhm.
who I'm wanting to do business with, versus when I'm doing business with, I'll just throw his name out, Mo. I want the experience of Mo over
Right.
here, right? I'm wanting certain things. um and so I think that'll be more important, to be able to look at ourselves, and we're going to have to ask others to get that feedback, but find ways to understand who I am, or as a company, who are we as a company, so that that extends out into our use of some of these technologies.
Yeah, I think it's spot on. To just to highlight that, you think about when you interact with like a Siri, right, or like a Hey
Yep.
Google or an Alexa. Um, to your point, it's given a name to sort of human it,
Yeah.
but yet it's clear then at that point you're interacting with AI.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you're okay with it.
and you are.
Okay, well, let me transition a little bit here. We're getting near the end of our second episode, and I want to get your closing thoughts on a couple different areas. um, there's a lot of change happening. There's a lot of things that, are making us question what's real, what's not. We're seeing, we kind of talked about it earlier, but, my wife and friends will show me videos on social media and say, can you believe this? And I've spent enough time with platforms like Sora or something, like, that's not real,
Not real.
you know? And so we're entering this time where we can't necessarily believe everything we see and hear and experience, especially digitally.
Yeah.
And, we're going to have a whole nother episode once robots
Yeah,
are
yeah.
walking around. But, there's so much unknown, there's so much that's happening. Yet, Bridget, one of the things I love talking about with you with is there's still a thread of strong optimism. When you think about the future, what still gives you hope about the future?
Oh gosh, so many things give me hope. Um, if I if I use a personal, example, again, 3 young children, I am just so excited and hopeful for what is gonna come in their lifetime. I mean, I
Hmm.
don't even think if I sat and really, spent some time imagining and writing it down, um, I could probably go pretty far to the right in terms of the imagination spectrum, and the flying cars things, right, comes
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
But if you think of it beyond just kind of the imagination of the opportunity they're gonna have to learn and to really enhance who they are as people is what really excites me.
Hmm.
Now you talk about all these various platforms, and you mentioned the ability to you don't even know how to have to know how to code. You can type in common language that says, "Hey, I want to build this website. Here's what I
Mhm.
want it to be able to do. Here's how I
Mhm.
want it to, interact." Those types of things. Those are things I'm putting in front of my 11-year-old intentionally because not because I'm trying to, you know, get him to the top of the line in terms of becoming the next great X, right? It's more just allowing him to use his imagination to discover more about himself
Hmm.
to use his brain in a different way, right? To grow and to just get a sense of, what all is out there. And,
Hmm.
it's for the same reason I love, like, on the one hand, I don't want them watching junk on their iPads, right? But the other hand,
Sure.
it's like things like YouTube can be so powerful in terms of the education and
Hmm.
just the questions they start to ask. Once they start dibbling and like getting a little bit of a taste, the curiosity that they have and how that just spawns the next question and the next idea and the next thought to me is so powerful. And
Hmm.
that's in the empowerment that I think is awesome because I'm using the example of my children, but that applies to anybody,
Hmm.
right? That applies to any of us. How can you just get curious? Ask a question. There's no harm for the most part, right? Be careful you don't put the wrong things in the internet, but it's like, you know what I mean? It's just get out there, try it out. It's not gonna, nothing's gonna happen that you can't, stop and delete back out. But that's what excites me. It's just the potential, right? For everybody, for the average human being. And to your point, democratizes the knowledge.
Hmm.
To me, that's really cool. Really,
Hmm.
really cool. So that's
Yeah.
my last that's my last thought.
Well, I hope it's not your last thought because I'm
Oh,
going to
well,
keep.
on that.
Yeah. I think that's exceptional. It's Bridget, as things are speeding up. I mean, you kind of described this a little bit here with what you're doing, but helping people embrace finding themselves through actually the use of technology, which I think is
Mhm,
fascinating. And I
mhm,
think I'm right there with you. Yet, as things are speeding up and moving so fast,
mhm.
how are you staying grounded? How are you choosing to stay grounded and steady and connected in this world that's just going faster and faster?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And, I would echo some of what I shared from that conversation that I had at the happy hour with another fellow realtor agent. Um, it can be incredibly overwhelming, right? You can jump on a social media site, you can jump on TV, you can listen to the radio. You're getting bombarded with, hey, AI can do this for you, or it can do that for you, or have you tried this, or sign up for this service. It can
Hmm.
become incredibly overwhelming. Um, and I think there's also the element too of, for me now as an entrepreneur, right? As you've pointed out, I'm starting from scratch and I am sort of observing what others are doing. What is it that I can learn from other people that I maybe want to incorporate into things that I'm doing?
Hmm.
But that's where I think you have to be very careful. And I think this speaks to your question is it's so important that you take the time to really reflect and understand what is core to you, right?
Hmm.
What makes you authentically you?
Hmm.
May be different from the person next to you. It may be very similar to the person next to you, right? It could go either
Hmm.
way. But again, don't turn yourself into the robot by just trying to be someone else or trying to live an unauthentic nature. That I think never works for anyone. What does Dr. Seuss say? Be yourself, everyone else is taken. Right.
Yeah, that's great.
I love that quote. So for me to stay grounded, um, it's first it's recognition of when I'm not. I think that's part of the unlearning nature that I was talking about. How do you start to recognize when you're getting away from your core?
Hmm.
Is it that scratchy feeling you get inside? Is it where you start to feel anxious because everything feels like, oh, you can't go forward, it's not going to work, you don't know what to do? So it's like recognizing and saying, oh, time out, it's happening,
Hmm.
let me get back to my core and really sort of take the time to again reflect. And you don't have to be a huge planner, but for me personally, just writing things down. A lot of people do that virtually or digitally. I do, but I tell you what, there's nothing more satisfying than like writing a list for me and like crossing things off the
Yeah, I'm
list.
right there. Yeah.
Oh, that tangible feeling. So I try to recognize if it's happening, help myself get back to my core. I might check in with someone, like you, for example. Hey, I'm
Hmm.
thinking about this as sort of my tagline, so to speak. And you sort
Yep.
of said, hey, that doesn't really make sense. So for me, it's seeking feedback from others, but then always being able to bounce it up against what I'm really trying to achieve and who I'm
Hmm.
really trying to be. Because at the end of the day, if I'm not authentic to myself, that will reflect and people will see that. And then it just impacts negatively. So hopefully I'm answering your question, but
Absolutely.
That's sort of what I try to do. There's no perfect sauce, secret recipe or secret sauce to it. I think it's just not being afraid to own every part of your identity and own who you are and
Hmm.
lead with that.
Hmm. Bridget, I've got two questions left for you.
Okay.
Um, okay, the next one, looking forward, right? Looking forward the next 10 years, the next decade.
Oof.
I mean, who knows, right? Who
Oof.
knows
Who
next
knows?
year?
I
So
know.
this, who knows the next 6 months? But still, 10 years from now, right? What do you hope we will say we got right about this season of change? What do you hope 10 years from now, without knowing what things are going to look like? I, I, I hope we got this right about this season of change.
Gosh, that's a deep question.
Hmm.
So, so I think what I would think about in terms of in 10 years, right? What do I hope we get right? I hope we still recognize that there's always opportunity to pivot and change and learn from where we've come from, right? History, the old saying, history repeats itself, right? So you gotta learn from your past. I hope that we recognize and value where we've come from
Hmm.
as we go forward, and that we're open to also recognizing and saying, hey, maybe we got something a little wrong. Or maybe we should have pivoted this way or tried something else. I hope we don't lose that ability to say, we messed up, we made a mistake, and here's something we're going to try differently. That's a lot of letting go of ego. That's a lot of, recognizing that we should do the good for the betterment of the majority, right? Those kinds of things. That's kind of what I hope, is that we recognize we may not get it exactly right, but let's do our best to continually aim to get ourselves pointed in the right direction. And if that means we have to, start over or change direction, let's be open to doing that.
Hmm. Excellent. Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you, Bridget. I've got
Yeah.
one more question, but I want to say thank you so much. This was the conversation I was hoping to have with you. I'm so grateful for who you are. It's been so fun in this season of life to get to connect with you and experience you in a way I didn't know that I would get to. I
Yeah.
just love you. You're the perfect guest for this episode because you bring that optimism and that wonder and hope about technology, and yet you are so human and you love connection and you love people. Um, and I just love that blend of who you are. And there's a cover image for the podcast that kind of shows you, and it was AI generated
Yeah.
using
Yeah.
photos, but kind of blends those two worlds, and that is how I see you now. I
Oh,
really
thank
see
you.
you as this person who's able to walk and bring together both sides of the world. So thank you so much for
Thank
spending time with us and being able to share your thoughts on this.
thank you.
um, my pleasure. um, I think that you're somebody who values connection and you would love to further the conversation with anybody who's open to it. How can people best connect with you? What are the ways that people can best connect with you?
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely would love to stay connected. Keep the conversation going. Absolutely. So you can find me on Facebook and Instagram, Bridget Knaub. My last name is spelled Knaub. And I'm also available just via email. My email address is bridget.knaub@gmail.com.
Awesome. And for the platforms that support it, we will look to include that in the show notes so it's easy to reference and you don't have to rewind and listen and find it again. But Bridget, I think so highly of you. I'm so much a fan of you, and I'm just enjoying the season of life, getting to know you at a more personal level. Thank you so much for being on Known Through Connection. Greatly appreciate your time and your thoughts.
Well, thank you, Jess. I feel the same about you. It's been awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, to the Known Through Connection community, thank you for being here with us. My hope is that you keep choosing in your world to connect with others. Take a moment this week to pause and to reach out to someone, whether it's a coworker, a friend, a family member. Let yourself show up with presence, be present, and see the people around you. Connection is still the most human thing we have, and it is worth practicing. Keep connecting. Thank you, everybody.